professional editor, and I've always wanted to expand my horizons by talking to other editors and sound designers, music composers, visual effects supervisors, essentially all the magicians who silently and invisibly work behind the scenes. This series is an attempt to make the invisible artists visible. I hope you enjoy the conversations. Hello and welcome to the Finest Cut. Today I have with me a guest who has been a massive inspiration, not just to me, but to a whole generation of editors. Hi, Sreekar sir.
Thank you, Antara. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir, and congratulations on your national award.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Sir, your craft and your approach to your craft has been a great influence on me. So when I started off this podcast, I immediately reached out to you because this would have been an incomplete exercise without your presence as a guest. So thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you too. Yeah.
So we'll dive straight right into the questions. And just to begin with, what I wanted to understand, what is the role of an editor in your opinion? Because we speak of, when you ask a lay person what they think editing is, they say, oh, putting together shorts or something like that. And we know that it's a lot more than that. So I wanted to get some insight to this from you.
See, what is expected of an editor from a director is that director has a vision of making a story. So this story, he wants it to unfold in a certain manner. So the editor's job is to understand that and try to get that vision of story on the screen or whatever format. So when this happens, what all the editor has to undergo is that he has to get a sense of the story, the flow of the story. So it's not about just, I don't think it's just about the director coming and telling you to join A, B, C shots together and the scene is done. So, I mean, that is just you need an operator. We call that an operator-based editing, no, where the director is so sure of himself that he can do it himself. But that is not what an editor is supposed to do in the truest sense. What he is supposed to do is understand the story and understand how it flows from one event to another. So, if you broadly look at it, initially probably is that the editor understands the scene and edits each scene separately, because that is how we are mostly able to do it if we do it parallelly and if you're not doing the editing at the same time. I mean, if you're not editing the whole film at one point of time, what happens is regularly some rushes come and you're editing, so you tend to concentrate only at that particular sequence and see what maximum performance or any nuances, all the things which you can try to get out of that particular scene is what we concentrate on at that point. So I always call this as the first stage of editing form. So that involves looking at the rushes and determining which are the takes which are good performance. Good performance need not necessarily be only good acting, but what acting amplifies that particular character, because there will be certain characters where if you a certain line said in a wrong way or with a little hesitation really make up for the character, and it may not have been intended, but that particular take would really push the level of performance of that character because it makes him much more real. Yeah. So these sort of things is what an editor is supposed to see. So his first job is probably to see all the good moments in that particular rushes and get it all out without even thinking how it will be joined together to create a sequence. And then will be the stage where we join these shots to make it as seamless as possible and to tell the story which is expected in that particular. So it's not like only a cut and paste where, and also it, I think, involves a lot of thought process on the editor to understand what is being said and at what pace the other, or at what pause the other person has to say the dialogue. So which, even if it is not shot like that, it can be artificially created because you have the freedom of cutting in between two shots. So you can actually create a little more pause than actually was said on the set, which sometimes amplifies the performance, so these sort of things, all these things, being to the situation, trying to understand that character and trying to get that whole thing into a sequence is what I would say will be the first stage of editing. Probably the second stage of editing would be is when all these sequences are joined together, which is also a major part of the editing work, is that how it flows, the sequences from each other flows to create a story, which I think is very, very crucial, because it really is the place where the editor sort of becomes the writer with the director and tries to create a structure for it, because the original structure may be good enough, but in most of the cases the structure does change for a lot of times because of certain things which crop up during the because there's quite a bit of difference between the writing and when you read a book and when you
Hmm.
see it on screen, because there are people acting, there are backgrounds which are happening, the background action is happening, lots of things. So some images can, if it's not shot in a the most ideal of locations, they can create a sense of redundancy in your brain, saying that, oh, it's going on for too long, but actually hasn't been going on for
Hmm.
too long. So all these factors is what the editor has to look into, and to make it palatable in that way, and then run the storyline together to see that it flows. I think the most important part of the editing job, I feel, is to see that the story flows and it keeps moving all the time, so that the audience never get a sense of getting bored or restless and stuff like that, which can happen in variety of ways. When the scene was conceived and written, probably it looked complete in the way it was written, but when it was shot, probably the information you wanted to give the audience is completed by the middle of the sequence, and then you're still continuing the sequence because the sequence has been shot. Now the decision has to be when to end the sequence if the information is complete to the audience. He's got the point, and now it's the time to go to the next sequence, because you don't want to go on repeating the point, nor you don't want to lose the momentum of the point he has made. So these sort of things, so during the second process, when we sort of play around with the screenplay, you realize A, B, C doesn't work. A, C, B works better in order of sequences because of a certain factor or a certain emotion. I think editor has to look into the emotional experience of the audience while uh, working on it, and it could be very target based. I feel each
Hmm.
film is based for a particular target. If I'm going to cut a film for a big star, probably my target audience slightly different. So editor has to adapt himself to that particular story, that particular vision of the director, and get into that rhythm to get it properly, I feel. So that's the sort of thing an editor is expected to sort of. I mean, it's almost like if I'm editing different. See, a director may be doing less number of films, and a editor maybe a lot of films. So he has to work like a chameleon, no? So I have to change to according
Yeah.
to this film, or we have more chances of working with more work,
Yeah.
I think.
But sir, for instance, I know you do multiple projects at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people prefer doing just one project at a time. Do you feel like multiple projects kind of keeps you prevents you from getting too indulgent with one project or something like that?
You see, I've always been. I mean, I had no choice like that initially, and then it's become a practice that
Yeah.
I somehow I'm able to enjoy it still. So
Ah.
I can switch over from one to another without
Yeah.
actually making a great effort for that, because it's for me it's like a job which I'm enjoying at the moment. So it's like going to a cinema theater and watching uh, mm, a blockbuster sort of film, or you watch a series film on a given day, and you don't actually judge it differently, so you enjoy both. It's like that. So like that I'm able to, so it's not too difficult. It can be pressurizing if dates clash and things like that, but mostly, luckily, what happens is there is space if you create that, you can work on. I've made a conscious decision that while working, I've always, when I take up a big film in the sense that which has scale and is going to take a lot of my time and maybe effort and things like that. There's a lot of action and these sort of things which is going to go on for 6 months, 9 months, whatever. So at that time, usually the other films which I are doing, the multi projects,
Hmm.
would be smaller films and things like that, so that it balances out, because the stress on that would be very high. The demands on it will be very high, and I can somehow balance it out with those gaps on these other sort of projects, whether I'm doing a small film in Malayalam or Assam or something like that. So that's how I've tried to balance it out most of the time, and most of the time it's sort of not messed up my programs. So that's how it goes on.
Right. So I wanted to know now, generally we say that if you want to edit, you have to have a good sense of rhythm, and some musical background usually helps. So, what if there's someone who doesn't have a musical background? Is there some way they can develop this sense?
See, taking myself, I have no background of music, or I'm not. I was not even a great listener of music in my teenage or whatever like that. I used to play cricket, and then I used to go and join and do editing, and weekends I'm playing cricket and things like that are happening. So I was, see, what happens is inherently a cinema itself, it has some songs and things like that. From there, I learned, that somewhere that those, it has a particular rhythm. No, music itself has a particular rhythm, and how the shots move. That's how I learned how to cut songs and things like that. And because music inherently, when you listen to it, it moves in rhythm or in seconds on things like that. So when you cut those shots according to that, that's how, like, cutting songs was the first musical exercise for me, in the for commercial films and things like that. So that developed the thing, and then that somehow develops, and that the audio and video, when they move together and tandem in a certain rhythm, it's very, you would call, what you would call is, that falls into place much more easily. We won't feel that there are cuts in a song. So if you're seeing a song, if it's cut at the right rhythm, you look at it as a whole uh, unit, and not as 100 shots. Although there are 100 shots which are they're dancing and all that stuff, because it's cut to rhythm, and the rhythm is what, whether people like music or not, it somehow finds a rhythm with all the audience. It's, I think, inherent, I think,
Yeah.
somehow, for people, and they will automatically fall into the rhythm with the music. So the same principle is what we use for other things also, like when we are cutting with music some sequences and things like that. So that's how I developed my rhythm with music, and not like I didn't learn actually, but then you enjoy, and then slowly you get into that. The editor can easily adapt himself to that, I feel. And now actually there's more chance that you would have heard more music than in my times, where it was not like, you don't have so many. It was only the radio which was there, and then the television and stuff like that. Right now you have so many apps for music, and Wink and this and that, so it's easily adaptable, like.
Yeah. So also, what is a good edit? And also, is there something called a, like? Would you say something is a bad edit?
See, what I always read all these newspapers, whether it's my films, other
Yeah.
films, and all that. Now, what they come out with, the critics, the so-called critics, what they say is, either they say a film is fast and it's good edit. I mean, obviously, a action film is going to be fast,
Yeah.
or a thriller is going to be fast. So that doesn't naturally mean that it's good edit. But and the moment the film is lengthy and the film doesn't work, they call it the editor could have taken off 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It's so much of a generalized statement without actually getting into the thick of things, because each film has its own journey. See, a director has visualized a story which nowadays with corporates and things like that goes through hundreds of readings and things like that, and they try to shoot as less as possible so that they don't fall into this zone. But
Hmm.
otherwise, a filmmaker who's got his own mind, he will say, I will shoot everything and let's look at it during the editing. So when he's trying to tell a story, the story may be long, it may be a slow burn, and anything can happen. That's the route he's taking, and that's the route we take. So the length per se we cannot. I mean, everybody understands over a period of time that the attention factor for an audience has reduced because of various things like television, YouTube, and all that. So we try to make a film smaller, but some stories may take time. So I don't think anybody can judge editing only by the length. How to judge editing would be probably is seeing what is not required in a sequence, and where you're actually exceeding the sequence brief by letting it die down. See,
Hmm.
for example, for a common man, it would be like that. I would have one guy would have come and told what he has to say, and there would be a very dramatic moment. And on the drama, you're ending, and a person is very affected. You can continue the scene because they would have shot for logistical reasons and also for logical reasons that X person would have left the house, he would have taken a car, got out of the driveway and gone. But in a heated emotional experience, it may not be required. So these are the things which you would like to look at in the fine line between good and bad editing. At this moment, is this moment required? That moment is not required, then you try to remove it. And then also inside the scene, sometimes when it is written, so much is tried to be told, but sometimes you feel you're beating around the bush, before coming to the point, because so much has already happened. So then in you eating into the scene and removing all the flab is probably good editing, and letting it loose would be bad editing. So these are the things which you need to see. And then if there are x number of scenes flowing, and then it doesn't have a coherence, and at every point you're trying to you're not able to understand what is going on, unless it's deliberately thought of as a screenplay which you reveal at the end at some point to give a high, then it's okay because it's a choice of narration. But otherwise, sometimes it so happens that it goes all over the place. I know you get. So these sort of things are what you need to look in for good editing and bad editing, and not like broad base it and say the length is too much, so the film doesn't work and it's bad
Yeah.
editing. I mean, that's generally how people look at it, because they really don't know the nuances of editing. See, it's about also about performances and things like that. No, so there'll be good performances, there'll be also bad performances. In a good edit, probably it's not only having the good performances. I would also look at people who would hide the bad performances, and there may be sequences where a person's presence is most important, but they would have shot both sides. But if the scene would be elevated to the next level if you stick to the main character and not even show the other person as much as possible. So these sort of decisions, just the fine line between good and bad editing, I feel.
Right. So when you're starting a project, for instance, you said like, looking for performances, one of the for initial things, like looking for moments is what you do. So what is your
Yeah.
process? What is your process exactly? And how much time does your team spend in just, for instance, organizing the project, then marking
See,
takes, that sort of thing?
yeah, what happens is initially when the rushes do come, we have assistants here on Bombay to synchronize the sound, and put it as a lineup. By lineup, I'm calling only the whole takes, all takes, 6 takes, 5 takes, all, but in the order of the sequence. Sometimes the claps are given in not order of the sequence, so they may be given at random. In the order of shooting, also they give claps some films. They won't. The first shot of the scene they must have shot at the as the eighth shot of the day, and they would have given it as eight only. So we just put it according to the sequence in one particular in the sequential order, and then the next is initially when I was editing, I used to be thinking that the third take is the best. The director would have on his notes, on his continued reports, also mentioned eight as very good. But when you look at it, you probably think that by eight, that character has been pushed so much into giving a performance. It's maybe not as good as natural as he was on third or fourth. It invariably happens to newer actors. The older actors probably could be even getting better as they keep doing. The experienced actors. Older by older I mean experienced actors.
Experience.
So
Yeah.
when this is happening, so initially you used to mark one take from the third or eighth and just cut the sequences. But later I realized that these takes in comparison is what really gives you a good judgment on which is the best take. So if you're seeing takes and you find that 5 takes are there for one particular sentence, you divide it by sentences, and the first sentence has got 8 options. Sometimes when it's a good actor and there's a lot of good performances, I make them join all the 8 together, all the 8 those lines together.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to judge it when you run it together, when all the 8 things are told, because otherwise the whole take would have probably 8 dialogues and it'll take 1.5 minutes for it to finish, and you cannot actually compare it next to each other, so if you keep the whole take, so I just make them do all these 8 those sentences together. We call it selections at that point.
Okay.
And 8, and then when you look at 8 of them, I immediately know that the 5th and 7th are good, the others are not so good, so we just remove that from that timeline. Like that, if I do it for all the reactions and things like that, no, it may take some time where there's a lot of rushes, but it really helps in simplifying the whole process, and you can easily zero down on the right take and the best performance. And like I told you, that one guy will be performing well, the other guy may not be performing well, maybe there is a chance, then you have enough of on less on the guy who you think is not up to the mark, and keep more on the other guy, and that's how you balance out on the performances. But the main thrust would always be, what is the focus of the scene, so keep it on that person or that issue at that moment.
Right. So I want to know, so from my personal experience, I have, like, when I'm initially starting a cut, the first 20 minutes or so of the edit takes me a really long time to put together. So I usually, like, I go ahead and I come back to it. And I get a little frustrated initially because it takes some time to find the right sur and the right tone of the edit. I want to know from you also, sir, that does that happen to you, and also any other kind of creative blocks that you face?
No, it actually happens to me also all the time, that the first time you are getting into a project and starting work on it, there is a little bit of resistance, in that sense, that because you're trying to get into something, and then even a sequence, to edit one sequence itself, sometimes, the beginning part is difficult, because it's like you're trying to do a new thing, then things start falling. Once you see there'll be 5 hours of rushes, 2 hours of rushes for a scene, and you're already mentally bogged by the fact that there are so much rushes for it, and then you're getting into it, and then you're trying to find your way across it. It's like you're going to find like swimming across the river or something like that. So when you're trying to find it is difficult at the point. But what happens is, instinctively, slowly, knowing the story and knowing the rushes, how it's good is that, how to simplify it for me is I would sometimes watch the whole rushes today and then just that's it. I wouldn't even
Acha.
edit it
Okay.
because I'm seeing a lot of information is just going on one after another. Take is going on, something is happening, and you're just absorbing the information and just leave it. I don't want to get to it right now. Sometimes I just go back and come back another day, maybe the next day, and then start editing, and things start falling into place. I think it's mostly to do with so much information clogging your brain. No, so it does make it difficult when the things are there's a lot of footage and lots of things to think about and things like that. So after all, quite a mental job for us. So we get pressurized, I think. But when you come back, then I'm remembering all the things, and then the match it starts falling into place. The rhythm of the edit. I'm saying, oh yes, this has to be in close, this has to be in wide, and maybe this
Ah.
has to be. Those things it naturally falls into place. But to arrive at that point is probably you'll have to give for the rushes to sink into you and maybe watch it maybe once or twice so that then that flow happens very fast and it's almost the
Mm.
scene can be cracked, edited in a very quick
Yeah.
manner.
So following from this, actually, two things that occurred to me. If you can suggest how, because I face this myself, as I mentioned. One is that nowadays we're given such little time to work on our edits that you can hardly see the rushes in peace. And secondly, there's so much footage because now everyone's shooting multicam because they have like one day to shoot, say, 12 scenes. So every scene
Correct,
is three cameras, if not more. And it's
correct,
I can see with my own assistants when they're doing lineups, and for me myself when I get the footage, it's very overwhelming to be battling itna, that quantity of footage plus on top of that delivering within that timeline. So
correct.
can you suggest like what is a good approach under these circumstances?
See, again, it's like we cannot get away with the footage because now because it's digital. It's they. I mean, a lot of people are going on an overdrive to can as much as possible, and it's also multicam, so it becomes two times more or three times more. And I mean, there is no. Cap on how much can be shot because it's just put on hard disk. While on when working on film, it was always like there used to be a clear demarcation. No, you should not exceed so much
Yeah.
negative and things like that. So they used to
Yeah.
be very careful in shooting.
Yeah.
Then slowly, when this changed, and now you have so much footage. So I think it's again a question of make simplifying the whole thing. What I would uh, uh, um, expect to do my assistants would be is to reduce the amount of rushes by removing the not so good ones first,
Huh.
you know. So it again comes to selections in the initial part. So you say they're like a action sequence or uh, what your sports event or something like that would have
Yeah.
about 5 6 hours. So first is to get the not so good ones out of the timeline. That creates a sort of a good atmosphere for the brain, I think, because you're watching at 6 hours and suddenly all the not so good, which definitely can't be used, are gone, and it becomes suddenly 2 3 hours, 2 3 hours. So that process we do first, and then from that further selection, and then start assembling it. I didn't know a lot of people used to do like this abroad about 20 30 years back when one particular person from some other country had come to work and he said can somebody do this for me, just simplify the whole thing and give so that I'll be able to edit it quickly because otherwise walking through the whole rushes,
Yeah.
because see, there may be a slow motion shot where a person will be running from left of the frame to the right of frame. It would probably be 10 seconds, and they would have shot in some 500 frames per second or something.
Yeah.
And that whole clip will be about 4 or 5 minutes. So the in between, just crossing the frame would be some 10 seconds, but so much, because they're waiting for him to come and things. So all these are simplified first, and you have these options. So when the editor sits, he has only the good moments in it,
Hmm.
which the totally unnecessary ones. Performance, of course, he has to judge, but I'm saying the car is moving left to right. There's like 8 takes, and you know that the beginnings and ends. You don't require all these. It's matter of decluttering the whole thing. I think that's crucial. I think when you're handling a lot of footage, so that it makes your whole mental pressure much less when
Yeah.
watching and working, and you can enjoy it more, because otherwise the pressure of it, you suddenly have five hours of rushes, and then you're looking at a deadline. Tomorrow you have to show the sequence to somebody.
Yeah.
It can be really a tense situation. So
Yeah.
you have to just see how to declutter that and try to get into a position that where you happily are able to edit that rushes, I think, with help or without help, whatever.
Yeah. So now, let's say now you've worked on something and you've shown your cut to the director. Does it happen that the director has a very different vision from what you have? Has it ever happened?
It does happen actually, because the director wouldn't have uh, expressed to us that he had some reservations about some things in the shoot, sometimes, and we wouldn't know about it, or even in the continuities, they wouldn't have written that a particular shot was shot, and it's not there in the rushes only. So the director comes
Right.
like, I had banked on this particular shot to tell this thing, and then we'll have to go back. Or I mean, recently also once I was editing with a senior director, and then he was not happy with the performance with one actor. So then when I'm editing, I'm using that because I didn't find it so bad. So he didn't convey it to me, he left it to me to explore it. And when after I did, he said, no, I have a small problem. The sequence is that I don't want to show much of this main actor because I'm not very happy with her performance. So can we cover it up with the other side only, and just reveal her
Right.
at the end, something like that. So these
Right.
sort of things happen, and it invariably, sometimes what happens is sometimes you, given the situation of the character, you would have thought that something you would have messed up in one take, and you
Yeah.
would have thought, no, let's not do that. It's not looking good, or there's some saliva here, or something like that, which you would have avoided, thinking that it's avoidable. But some directors like all that,
They
and they would
want
say
that.
that is what I was looking at,
Okay.
because I thought that was very real and all that. So
Right.
you'll have to
Right.
go back to that and maybe change the
Right.
edit a little bit,
Right.
like that.
Right. But do you end up like arguing with directors or convincing them?
See, arguing is no, because I've handled too many people and too many films. So generally, argument I avoid. Even if I'm not happy with a particular way of thinking, I would try to reason it out, or I would try to do the other cut and show. So several times, if I'm not meeting, if I'm editing myself, and most of the time it's not without the director. It's without the director.
Huh.
So what happens is I always create more than one version for some sequences and keep them. So when it comes to a thing like that, this was better. That I try to have those options ready with me. In terms of, it could have been done like this or it could have been done, but we did it like this because this didn't work. Either it's continuity or the performance, and he would have banked on the wide shot for whatever,
Right.
for the effect, but it
Right.
wouldn't have translated on screen, so we would have cut it in a different way. So
Hmm.
we have the options, and then there's a healthy way of trying to reason it out and come to a conclusion, because generally we tend to believe that both of us are going towards going
The
to making
same.
a good
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
The end is the same, so
Yeah.
we try to avoid. But sometimes you have to give in also. It
Yeah.
happens sometimes that
Yeah.
somebody adamant. It has so happened that after the release they would come and tell, yeah, you had told me about the scene, but I was very insistent, but it doesn't work in the theater. It can
Ah.
happen, and it can
Right.
happen the other way around. I'm insisting on this doesn't work, and he's saying, no, I had, because they are closely, very closely knit with the script. They've been
Yeah.
working on it for a long time, so everything is a slightly more personal than
Right.
it is for us.
Right.
When I'm trying to get emotionally driven by the story. I'm looking at the story flow and all that, but I'm not maybe as closely uh, attached to it as much as a director is, because he's written and he's felt for the character. He's written, and that sort of thing. So a certain sort of objectivity may not be with him. So actually, the editor is supposed to bring in that. But
Yeah.
at some point, some things, they very deeply, and if it's a film which he's trying to tell something, and he's very affected by it, and he's trying. So we may feel that it's not necessary for him. It is the statement he wants to make. So then
Hmm.
you think around that, and why is he so insistent? Okay, it has affected him so badly. So we'll try to tell it in a best possible manner rather than a manner he has shot. So we'll have to sort of work around it many times.
Someone had once said, like I had overheard someone saying that Shrikar sir can make magic out of nothing at all.
There's no magic to do. No, it boils down to the story you have. It's
Yeah.
the performances you have, the way the director, how he shot it. That's basically the, I think, ground reality. The thing is that how you tell it, and especially in films which are slightly complicated in structures. Sometimes you tend to tell it very complicated, and it doesn't even reach the audience because you are making it complicated. So at that point we try to simplify it. It's let it be a complicated script, but simplify it so that when you get the point, you get it correctly and you're able to relate. Usually if you see in the first 10-20 minutes of a film, the film is usually sold to the audience. The first 15 minutes, or
Yeah.
it's I think it's very crucial that you actually sell the idea of the film in the first 10-15 minutes to the audience. If you don't, it's going to be very difficult for an audience to get back because they would have already made an impression. So when a characterization or an event or anything in the first 10-15 minutes, if you drive the story and you emotionally lock with your character,
Hmm.
and then so like that, one or two films happened that they had so many different things at the top which are very good, but it doesn't let you enter the film itself. It's so scattered. First 10 minutes you don't know. You enjoyed a
Huh.
bit, but you don't know what is happening and how. So you create a route to get into characterization, and you follow a character, and especially if it's a big starrer film and things like that, you would like to root for the main character, like, and then move with him and enjoy the film. So these
Hmm.
sort of things actually is what we look at sometimes. So sometimes if it works, it becomes magical. So it's also by experience. No, by
Huh.
experience you've seen so much, so you tend to bring that experience to that. You have to be in tune with today, but in terms of narrative and all, it's much different from what was
Yeah.
many years back. But finally, the sense of storytelling, the sense of understanding. So when you're sitting and watching something, you want to understand it, you want to experience it, and you enjoy it. All these things, sometimes there are stumbling things in between because you want to be innovative. So those are things which need to be simplified sometimes, so that you actually let the audience enter the film and then experience it, rather than at the top itself trying to create, I mean, trying to show off. Sometimes we try to show off,
Yeah.
and it actually works for the detrimental to the film. So it can happen like that sometimes.
Right. Right. So you have some assistants and associates who work with you.
Yeah.
What are the skills, like essential skills, to be a good assistant or a good associate?
See, with the assistants, what I would require them is to do the filing and the sound syncing. Syncing is what they are required to do. And if they're geared up well enough, then to look after the post of it. Where exporting the reels, giving the EDLs, when the CGs come to place it on the next layers for us to see, and things like that is what associate is little more closer to the edit, in the sense that
Hmm.
all these selections, and in case we are not available to do a lineup of an edit, to show us that, sometimes it so happens that we are busy with one project, but the other production has sent some rushes and we have to see,
Yeah.
and we don't have time immediately to sit on it to actually crack the edit, but you would want you want it to see in an edited fashion to uh, pass on information to the director saying that it's going, so the edit is not final for us, but the thing is that this is how it's flowing out, like this, the scene is working or not working. See, most of the many people I work with, either if they're super experienced, then they also want immediate feedback. Like if I'm working with Vishal Bharadwaj or Mani Ratnam and all that, they keep sending rushes almost immediately. So I
Hmm.
have to edit them and see. I don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
send also sometimes, but I have to see and just report back saying that it's going properly and things like that. So because they have a wavelength and they've been working with me for some time.
Yeah.
And it's more important for me with the newer filmmakers because with the others, it's just a matter of telling them that a character is working. It's just the first 5 6 days, because even shooting takes 5 6 days for it to actually gel. So, for the new actors coming from somewhere, actresses coming from somewhere. So we would have visualized this character, the cop to be like this, or the gunda to be like this, or the mother to be like this, and they would come and play it slightly differently. So just warn the director that probably this is not the way we were looking at it when we writing the script and things like. So it's good if parallelly some work happens so that we know that just it's a sort of a warning. For the younger directors, I think it's much more important because they're going to do the first film or they're doing the second film. They would
Yeah.
want the scene to be edited and seen and things like that. So sometimes, if we are not able to do it, also, then I would expect the associate to do a rough lineup and show it so that I can immediately see and then report back to them, and then we sit the next day and do whatever changes we want to do on it. And I mean, we want to explore further into the rushes and stuff like that. So I think for him, and even sometimes it happens that the choreographer would like to come and sit and edit. So I would have already done a cut, so I'm not so interested to sit with a choreographer because he's anyway going to do a job which is going to be very,
Yeah.
I'm expected to do a very mechanical job or what he wants. So then I would expect the associates to sit with such people like a stunt choreographer or a
Yeah. Dance
dance
choreographer. Yeah.
choreographer and do the whole thing and then get the timeline across and do what we want to do with that, because
Yeah.
even that they would look at the choreography and we would look at choreography highs plus a little bit of storytelling also.
Storytelling.
So
Yes.
we may have some story in that where a person is looking or a person is getting affected, whatever. We try to drive that so that the balance is maintained, that you get the high of a song and you also get the story across by the end of the song. So in all these areas I use the associate more.
Right. So largely, I think most of the editors community feels that editors are quite underpaid. And there is generally a lack of acknowledgement of the efforts that are put in by the editors. And what happens with younger editors, for instance, is if they quote a certain amount of money, then they don't end up getting the job at all.
Correct.
So
It's,
yeah, so how do you think one can navigate this kind of situation?
there is not much option, no, because I don't think, see, they require the services of editors, but it's not budgeted according to that, at least even in terms of Hollywood or anything. So the major difference I think is, no, what they pay is one issue, and how much time they take from you is another issue. In a foreign country like in Hollywood and all that, they pay you by the week, or for 8 weeks or whatever like that. So even if they pay less for a smaller, newer guy, and if they pay more for a slightly more experienced guy, it still is somewhere reasonable, I feel. But here, that is not there. I think that is what is the biggest problem. Is that, see, a lot of people don't have choice, because if I say no, uh, another guy is going to do for lesser price and the job is gone. And how will that editor become a good popular editor, or a guy who can get more jobs, is only by doing films and
Yeah.
showing his work on it. So if he
Yeah.
works on 5 films and one of them clicks, then he's known by that film or the director, and then he can move on to get more work where he can make more money.
Yeah.
So he has no choice, absolutely. And it is, of course, sad that they don't equate the technical values of the amount of work that an editor is expected to do in a film. It's not proportionately paid, even now. And I've been doing a lot of work in Bombay and all. I was very surprised one day, one of our top producers was quoting an amount for his film which he was giving, and I am itself not getting paid even half of it. I don't know whether he's telling the truth or not.
Oh my
So
God. But
because he had a problem with the stars, so he was saying I should pay my editor well and all that stuff. And but the amount he was saying, I'm saying I'm not even drawing half that money, because all the time I'm stuck with people who are saying we are making small films, sir. This is
yeah.
like what
Yeah.
I'm doing with this small hero, that small hero. How can we don't have budget and all that stuff? But I think I don't know when it would come. But I think if it's time and money are interlinked, like in other countries, maybe it's still not good, so bad as how it is today. Even
Hmm.
see, they don't consider, because editing per se is always has been for a long time considered as a very mechanical job, because the amount they used to shoot used to be very less, so they thought it's
Yeah.
just like cut and paste,
Joining.
but
Nah.
but it has
Yeah.
grown much beyond that in the last 20, 25 years or 30 years, whatever. It has come to a stage where editors and see the job, it starts even if you start after the shoot. If you technically, I am doing it from beginning of shoot itself for most of my films, because I want to keep abreast of the developments and what is happening, and it makes my job easier at the end also. uh, but if even if I start after the thing, it's a whole lot of work, because the edit has to be locked. Then we have to go through the post production. You have to have a grip on the till the release date, which period is quite a bit. Even for the quickest of films, it's maybe more than 6 months, or for a big scale film, it's more than 1 year. And
Yeah.
during COVID, it was even for 2 3 years.
Even for two. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but still, it's not. It cannot measure it with the time you have spent. It is a fixed amount which you are stuck with as an editor, and you have to work around that. So, and we've also not gone beyond that, or we don't have a forum where we can actually talk about this. So that is also another reason where you have to take more work. And if you're getting
Hmm.
paid very well,
Hmm.
then obviously the amount of work you want to take will be much less. So now you have to multitask to make the same sort of money for
Yeah.
most of the
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I agree that, and that's one of the things that, like, even I have kind of trying to figure what can be done, because even assistants and associates get paid so little that
Ah,
then we want them to be available at all times for our work. So it's become a bit of a catch-22 situation for sure.
correct.
Yeah. So, lastly, I just want to ask you, what if there's something that you could change about the editing process? What would it be?
Editing process itself.
Process, or the way, the perception of editing, or our particular community, the way we function.
Yeah, I feel at least in the south and maybe also in the north, the producer community, don't take editing so seriously. I think, because for them they for them, because it's a business, and the business is centered on the stars and to a certain extent on the director. So they're looking at it as a proposition where once the shooting ends, they want to release. So the shooting can go on till whenever because of the star, and but the release has to happen on a given day. I think it's much better in Bollywood, because what I'm working or anything, I have a space where I know this edit will happen, then it will go there, then it will come back, and then there are 3 months for post. South, it's not there at all. It's the shooting ends, and then they're sitting on your head to get it to
Right.
um, release the film. So
Right.
I think somewhere they should understand that this job, how important it is, for making a film. Of because through this job, the director actually completes a product and shows it to the public. He does a lot of work before that, and a lot of people work there also. The editing and then the sound, guys actually work on it so much to make the product be liked by the. So that importance is not really given to the craft of editing. I don't know how we can actually. It's more than the audience. I don't bother, because it's just one experience. They're coming for it. It's better for them, for them not to notice the edits, because it means it's more seamless. They are not so much of a, but the industry itself, it doesn't take the editing job so seriously, other than a few directors who realize the value of editors. So it's few and far between. So somewhere that thing, so I don't know, as a community, maybe we need to express ourselves and assert ourselves in some way. I don't know how, but
Right.
I think we need to, because we are also not in the limelight, unless, I mean, it's much better than probably 20 years back, but still, you are not so exposed as, it's very funny in the South, in some awards like Filmfare Awards in the South, there's no editing award at all.
Oh,
They
at
have
all?
maybe, no, for the South Filmfare Awards, it's not there.
Oh.
So that's very, even many popular awards, they don't have an editing
Hmm.
award, because they don't think it's the value of spending money and taking them, because it's not publicity for them. The actors they have, supporting actors they have, everything, director they have, they even have choreographers and stuff like that. They don't have in some of the awards.
Oh,
Not,
wow.
it's not so bad. They have, at least for most,
Yeah,
all the
yeah, yeah.
people
Yeah,
recognize.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
here, it's in some awards they don't even have that category at all. So it's a little weird and sad. But I mean, we have to go on, and we have to make a statement by doing our work properly, I suppose.
Great. On that note, sir, I'm not going to take more of your time, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And it was
Yeah.
lovely to talk to you again for such an extended period of time after many years, I think.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Antara. All the best to you too. And I hope you do a lot of these videos and educate people on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to this channel so you're tuned in for our upcoming episodes.